All right, everybody. So, hey, we're live now with Nick Redding slash Eric Duckman. He is a man of manosphere, the manosphere jack of all trades. He's done quite a lot, and we're going to talk to him. He's from Edmonton, and I am. Oh, that's you. So, but I'm not actually showing anything right now because I have to go and post this to my actual, social medias. So why don't you guys start talking and then I'll start screen sharing some stuff. Sound good?
Yeah,
Sounds
sounds
great.
good.
Okay.
We were talking to you, Nick, just a little bit ago about a little bit of your background. So I guess we'll kind of echo some of
Whoa,
that.
whoa,
You said
whoa!
that you started doing
Oh wait, that's me. That's me. Sorry. Okay, it's my fault. My bad. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
okay, started doing like men's rights proper in 2012, but even before that, you were active with the Intactivists. And some people who tune into this, they might recall the old like "Don't Be That Girl" campaign, which was a response to "Don't Be That Guy." And I remember hearing about all of that going down. And I think you had said that it was as a result of that that Men's Rights Edmonton, which is the group you had been working with, that they, at that time, and like what I think this was 2013, that they became like the men's rights, I guess, the thing with the most eyeballs on it. I was gonna say Mecca, but that's not quite the right word for it.
Yeah. So yeah, I started the website and the group mensrightsedmonton.com. And in 2013, we released the "Don't Be That Girl" poster campaign, and that was the most widely publicized men's rights effort in history at that time, and that was in about 2013. That was the biggest news item in the in the Canadian media in the summer of 2013, right up until Rob Ford got caught smoking a bunch of crack. He was the mayor of Toronto. But
Yeah, and he got reelected after that scandal, right? I think that was the story.
yeah,
Wait, really?
yeah,
Like a
yeah.
Mariam Perry?
Yeah, exactly. It would be Canadian Marion Mary.
Okay.
But on a timeline, I've heard you talk about your background in the far left, Prince,
Yeah.
and with me, it's the same thing. My uncle is a professor of Indigenous Studies. My dad took me to Cuba so that I could see the last bastion against American imperialism when I was 18.
Oh God.
Um, and um, but I started seeing problems with the far left when I was about 17 years old in about 2011, um, and then after a couple of instances, one of which in 2005, my home got invaded um, by a bunch of white knights. I wasn't their target. It was a roommate of mine who had the temerity to defend himself against a woman who attacked him. Um, but then I come back to Edmonton and I see the same witch hunt mentality. So sorry. In 2005, my home got invaded when I was out in Victoria, um, and by a bunch of white knights. And then I come back to Edmonton, and I see the exact same witch hunt mentality against, a spuriously accused rapist who was a friend of mine. And that was sort of the final straw for me to say that feminism had to openly be opposed. So in 2009, I started just looking up anti-feminism, and I found all of the red pill community that we know today. And in 2012, I started the website mensrightsedmonton.com. But before that, I thought that I could deal with the issues without being anti-feminist at all, and just being pro.
Oh yeah, those are the days when we think that.
Yeah. So I tried to start a street campaign. Well, I mean, I did start a street campaign called "Foreskins Are Awesome," And I just went down. Me and some coworkers, we went down to White Avenue, which is a popular street here in Edmonton, and we had shirts that said "Foreskins are awesome" or "May the foreskin be with you," and we handed out literature about the dangers of routine infant circumcision. So that was just the intactivism stuff that I did.
Now, was there feminist pushback against towards just that?
Uh, no,
Okay.
wasn't there wasn't feminist pushback. There was just regular gynocentric pushback. Um,
Like
when
people
you
saying, "Oh, it doesn't count when it's men because it's much worse." Like women worsting.
Yeah, yes, and it was the one of the most the incident that stood out most in my mind was an effeminate gay man with a female friend who really took exception to what we had to say.
I would love to
Um,
meet one of those guys in that circumstance.
well, it's amazing in a lot of circumstances. All of the same chivalrous white knight bullshit that we see out of straight guys, we also see out of gay guys.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Tell me
yeah.
about it. They certainly respect women.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they've also been conditioned to hate their own sex,
Yeah,
uh,
a
just
lot, a lot, and it's
like straight men.
yeah. Okay, first of all, straight men, obviously, and that usually just comes from growing up, and it's it is difficult, even if you're not overtly beat up or anything. You still are treated differently, and you're treated kind of weird. Like I run into it on playing video games, and people are like, "Oh, this guy has a gay accent," and they think I'm gonna be bad or something, and but ultimately, I think that the other thing is that gay men are really messed up people, and I don't think that that's because it's inherent in the nature of gay men necessarily. Though maybe there's a little bit of kind of strange things going on with gay men, like maybe there is a little bit of nurture over nature that has led them to be a specific sense. I'm not going to say that though. That's not what I'm committed to actually saying. But what I will say is that the gay lifestyle, like, having an entire lifestyle that revolves around hookup culture and drinking and doing drugs and not a whole lot more than that, and especially not a whole lot more than that because feminists have taken over everything. So we're not allowed
Yeah,
to actually be gay men and appreciate what is unique about gay men as males and, that kind of thing. Gay men become very unhappy and very weird. And they have Stockholm syndrome, and there's a whole lot of like, okay, blaming other people when the problem is generally coming from within. It's the feminists that are within the community and each other, the gay guys who don't understand what's going on, and they hate each other. They don't know how to date. They're mean to each other. It is a major problem in many regards, like if you're a gay guy that acts like a normal dude and isn't totally catty and gossipy and tries to be loyal to people and all that stuff, you're gonna get kind of ostracized. So that's what's weird about it.
well, if I don't know if you'll take solace in hearing this or not, but it's like that in every community. People who have a backbone to not jump on, not join any lynch mob with torch and pitchforks that happens to come along.
Uh-huh.
They're a danger to those who would pick up a torch and pitchfork immediately. The gay community, from what you've told me just now, is exactly the same as pretty much any other community. Any field of human endeavor, feminists will come along and say and exercise moral authority over it. And you're telling me that the gay men in these communities are particularly unhappy and all this, but I mean, the straight men in
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
are the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. I just put up this it was from a Medium article. Medium is the worst. It's like it's like Tumblr for people who are older than the age of 18 or whatever. And like they have, why are gay men turning on transgender people? Oh, I'm sure that's the order of operations. I'm sure that's how it went. Like it used to be back before like trans became this huge trend. It was that the only people who were nice to trans people were gays and lesbians, and sure, there were probably a fair amount of gay guys that were a bit more skeptical than the lesbians, because lesbians are, they're always drinking the Kool-Aid anyway. Like, already, you don't have to help them. You have to start doing crazy stuff. Like, in the UK, there's the trans person who raped, abused a child or something, and then raped a woman in a female prison, and then the lesbians start getting a little scared. But with gay men, I think it was mostly just like, people being like, well, I'm trans, and I mean, I'm not on hormones, but I identify as a woman. And gay guys are like, okay, so what? Like, I felt like that for a long time, but I didn't act on it, like, and then they really hate the gay men. But overall, I think gay men were mostly pretty nice to trans people, but, like, trans people were nicer then. Like, they didn't demand gender neutral pronouns if they were non-binary. They would be like, well, you can call me either he or she. I kind of prefer she, but, I realize that I'm born in a male body, so I look like a he, so, people call me he all the time. It doesn't really bother me. And then people would use the T word that rhymes with granny all the time, both the trans people and the gay men.
Tyranny.
Both the trans people and the gay men would use that word, and then all of a sudden, like one day, there was a upload to the NPC patch, and every trans person, it became their personal mission to flip the fuck out on anybody who ever said the T word that rhymes with granny, and it was like, I will not be your friend because you've used it in the past, and, I'm gonna retroactively destroy our friendship, and unless you grovel, and it was just like, whoa, what has gotten into my friends that are trans, So
well, it's because, like, the crowning tiara of any victim movement is to have your own N-word, right? And, like, there's only one, and every other group wants one. Like, women really want one. They really want to make the C word like the N-word, and I was about to use the T people's word, but, like, it's the same as their name, practically. It's, like, a cute version of it. Like, it's, like, the worst attempt at creating an N-word.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's the really dumb thing about it, is that, like, the T word is the only word that, out of all of them, that the people that it describes have not embraced in terms of some sort of, like, oh, we get to say this, but you don't. And worst of all, like, the F word, that rhymes with maggot, gay guys say that all the time, and trans people do too, and we don't care. We're like, okay, yeah, you're close enough. You get to use it, if...
which group, though, actually did the best job at taking ownership of their word is straight people, because theirs is breeder, right? Like, you're a bunch of breeders, and they're sitting there like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point, like...
Yeah, but, let's get back to, Nick, what your thoughts?
Well, on which?
Taking over communities, people being unhappy, like your experiences trying to wade into the MRM. Like, I was just gonna say real quick, though, I forgot to say this before, it's that when you, like, there's so many people who came from the background that I did, and, we're so misunderstood, who, we always thought that I always thought feminism was probably 75% true, but I knew 25% was just not true, and that these people were crazy. So I was never really, like, going around calling myself a feminist, or, like, trying to go to feminist speakers to hear their wisdom or anything. But, if somebody asked me if I was a feminist, I'd be like, well, what do you mean? And they say equality. I'd be like, okay, sure. But ultimately, then I started realizing that there was something seriously wrong with feminists because they had to take over everything and put themselves in charge. And then I thought, well, let's try to be reasonable and point out the good sides. And everybody who does that, they realize that feminists are the problem. It's like you can't go through that experience without realizing that, there's two sides. One is right, one is just wrong about everything. And so,
well, I think that what we're seeing with feminists and their incessant need to take things over is a collective version of B cluster personality disorders. Do you guys know much about that stuff?
Yeah, actually a fair amount. That would be borderline, narcissistic, histrionic, and antisocial.
Yeah. And so with all of those people, there's a deep need to control others. And also there's a deep need to feel special. So deciding that you hold some sort of doctrinal superiority over anyone around you who does not hold that, and that superiority entitles you to tell others how they can live their fucking lives. That all of that perfectly comports with any of those 4 personality disorders, in fact. I think that you can't diagnose a person with one of those disorders if A, they grow out of it, or B, if it can be attributed to the social environment that they're in. And I honestly think that all of this feminist social justice shit is the project to institutionally normalize B cluster behaviors, so that B cluster people, all of their bullshit can be attributed or at least disguised by their environment.
Yeah, it's like when feminists started influencing the psychology field. The first thing they did was make sure that they got rid of hysteria as a disorder, and then it's like, yeah, now let's make everybody hysterical by normalizing these behaviors, which are apparently contagious, as we've learned.
Yeah, and well, they're contagious because it's humiliation. It's like any other type of abuse, like sexual abuse or violence or anything else. When you are told that you have to believe a version of reality that is obviously false, or you are a bad person, that alienates you from your own self, your own thoughts and feelings, and your own ability to perceive reality around you, and that's humiliating and abusive.
Yeah.
And once that's happened to you, you are then humiliated, and you go forth and you humiliate others in the same way that you were humiliated, bring them down to your wretched level.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like return, or not return, Dawn of the Dead. They get up and kill, and what they kill, get up and kill, and what they kill, gets up and kills. So we're seeing this giant spread of psychological and spiritual death among living bodies. I mean, to use very dramatic language.
Yeah, why do you think that, okay, so like I experienced that, as I imagine that you do too, growing up, and My reaction was never to like really internalize it. My reaction was, well, also due to some other circumstances like chronic pain. I sort of just became a drug addict and decided that I was the crazy one because everybody I knew was crazy. So like, what else was there to do? But why do you think that there's some people who internalize it and insist upon putting others through it?
And then people like you and me who don't take it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe like for a while, my theory was that we were just people who grew up without that kind of social recognition, that social validation, and so we grew up not being addicted to it.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, there's other people. There's people like Bering and Karen Strawn, who I know her because she lives here in Edmonton.
Yeah.
I think she mentioned she gets coffee with you sometimes.
Well, if by coffee you mean lots and lots of beer, yeah. But anyway, Bering and Karen Strawn have always been highly socially competent their whole lives.
I've been very, very socially competent my whole life. That's the weird part. But I was never rewarded by my teachers and by the PC, good girl type crew. I was always just rewarded by the rebels. And there were a lot of them in Seattle in the 90s. Now, a lot of them self-identified as feminists, and I just didn't really know anything about that. But everyone was doing drugs and going to raves and going to rock shows and stuff like that. I got along just fine in that.
Yeah. Well, I was very socially incompetent for my whole life. Very much an incel, actually. And okay, so to bring it back to 2012 and 2013 here in Edmonton. I had started the website Men's Rights Edmonton, and I had attracted these people, but they were all like, you say that you were an addict. I'm still a drunk. That's why I forgot about last week's show. I don't even remember.
Yes. Okay.
Arranging to go on it with you, and I apologize. But I had already ruined my reputation through social awkwardness and explosive alcoholic retardation. So when I started speaking about these ideas, at first I was very worried that because I fit the stereotype of the MRA, the neckbeard who couldn't get laid, who lived who lived in his parents' basement. I was worried that people were going to just say, "Oh well, of course, that's Nick Redding, spreading these ideas. Of course he would, right?" But then I was very worried about people doing that. But then eventually I just realized that people gossiping about me would get word going about my website. And that a byproduct of all these people gossiping about me would be the publicization of men's rights attitudes. So I just embraced the flame and I let people make fun of me. And also because all the people that I attracted, they were all professionals. Like I was, I had wasted my life drinking, but I was smart enough to attract like architects and former Air Force techs and graphic designers, and they were the ones who made the "Don't Be That Girl" poster campaign.
Let's look at those posters right now. Don't be that girl. Better not show me don't be that guy. Okay. So women who drink not responsible for their actions, especially when sex is involved. Just because you regret a one-night stand doesn't mean it wasn't consensual. Yeah, I've seen these.
Yeah, so those were put up by my guys, and we attracted the guy who designed that in 2012 when I challenged the feminist community here in Edmonton to debate. The very first time we got in the papers was 2012 when I started putting stickers for my website on posters for the local Fringe Festival, and after that we got a little bit of attention, but then once those posters broke, everybody was talking about them. And now, because of that, so back in 2013, the media they had not been primed to deal with dissidents like us yet.
Yeah.
So they actually, when they initially ran the story, they didn't have any SJW filters on it. So they actually reported that we got about half positive feedback and half negative. But now the mainstream media is far more tightly controlled. They would never report on that.
Yeah. Like they never report on my channel at all. And I think the reason why is because I so perfectly defy the stereotypes of what they think, somebody with my views would be. Like, I'm a gay guy. I used to have a music and theater career that was actually a thing. People, like thousands of people, know me from. I was quite good looking when I was younger. All these things. What?
I said, I'm sure you still are.
Well, I mean, I have all right features, but I'm not good at taking care of myself. I'm 37, and at the ICMI, somebody was like, "I thought that you were Gavin McInnes when you walked in." He's like 50. I think it largely had to do with the glasses and the tattoos, because I have similar tattoos. But yeah, that's why they don't report on me. I'm guessing. That's just my guess. But I just want to say that I made a "Don't Be That Girl" meme type thing just to kind of promote my channel a little bit. And mine said, it showed a picture of a girl who looked like she was deep in thought, and she was thinking, if I say I believe her, maybe they'll all say they believe me if I make something up about a guy. And then it said, "Don't be that girl."
I'm pretty sure I shared that actually a couple months ago. But what you said about you never being reported on because you perfectly defy the stereotype, right? And that's just the thing, is that Karen Strawn was in Edmonton just like me, and her work is obviously far more sophisticated and prolific than mine, and that's why she wasn't reported on, right? By the same sources who reported on me, because I had a reputation. I had developed a reputation as a drunken idiot. Right, and so when I learned martial arts and I was taught about the psychology of a group of street thugs, I was told a phrase that I took with me when I fought SJWs, and it's the exact same thing. They're not looking for a victory; they're looking for a victim. They reported on me because they thought I was an idiot, and they thought that they could humiliate me.
That's a great line.
But, yeah, they're not looking for a victory; they're looking for a victim. So that's why they wouldn't report on Karen, even though she's a far better representative of the men's rights movement than me, because she wears her genius on her sleeve, and you wear your intelligence and competence on your sleeve too. I disguised myself as an idiot. Well, I didn't disguise myself. I mean, I came across as an idiot, and all the SJWs in town thought that they could swoop in on me after I. So a perfect example of this is the slut walks that we attended. So after we dropped the "Don't Be That Girl" poster campaign and the whole country knew who we were, I showed up at the 2013 Edmonton Slut Walk with a sandwich board that said mensrightsedmonton.com, and we had pro slut signs. So I heart sluts and I heart boobs and hooray for sluts. It was me one other guy with signs, and we were getting filmed by a third guy.
Is this it right here?
I
Yeah,
can't.
it'll come up on the watch link in a second. It's delayed.
Hold on. Well, I mean, I'm just using Skype here, so.
Oh, okay. Well,
But
did you have like ginger blonde hair and beard?
Yeah, and a cleft lip. Yeah, and I'm tall, and I've got a sandwich.
Yeah, and you were wearing the you had the clipboard on, and it says "I heart sluts." So.
Yeah, well, I'm holding a sign that says "I heart sluts." Yeah, but it sounds like you've
Found
got the video. So what I did was, again, if you've got a drama background, then you know about the art of clowning.
Uh huh.
I showed up there, and we knew that if we showed up and outright protested it, then we could easily be made to look like bad guys. So we showed up with signs of support. Like we went to a slut walk with pro slut signs, and whenever anybody asked me what I was doing there, I could just go back. I could just fall back on saying, "I'm here to say I love sluts." You know, and that, I mean, just saying I love sluts over and over again is funny enough in itself, but it's also morally unimpeachable because it's a slut walk.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
It's the single most event appropriate message you could bring, and they still tried to find.
Yeah, they'll object to it, but they won't have any tangible way of logically objecting to it. They'll just sort of be like, "No, but you meant. I know what you meant." You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so what that right there, what you just described, is self-righteousness.
Yeah.
Right. Those of us who value fair play in argument, and I know it's a cliche, but logic and reason, we are submitting to the authority of reason.
Yeah.
These people are self-righteous.
Yeah.
Right?
Wait, sorry, I just want to say something real quick. Because there was a perfect encapsulation of that. It was Chris Rock talking about arguing with your girlfriend. Like, he was talking about love, and he was like, he's like, you got to do yes to everything. You got to just say yes. She says, "Can we get this?" And you're, "Yes." "Can you get this?" "Yes." And then you just rubber stamp it like a stamp, And he said, "And don't argue. You cannot argue because you can't win. You will not win." And then he says, and there's a reason why. Because in an argument, men are handicapped because we have a need to make sense. Women ain't gonna let a little thing like sense fuck up their argument. They aren't in it for sense. They're in it for distance and irritation. They're trying to get you to shake the shit out of them.
I would agree with almost all of that, except I wouldn't divide it along lines of men and women.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. But he was talking about relationships, so.
Yeah, but it's very important to understand that, because Paul Elam from A Voice for Men.
Oh right? Yeah, we know him personally.
Yeah. He the advice that he gives to men pursuing relationships with women is just see how they react to being told no.
Yeah.
It sounds like if someone is in a relationship like Chris Rock was in, and it turned out a little while ago that Chris Rock was getting fucking fleeced in a divorce.
Oh yeah. She didn't view him as an opponent, but more as a victim waiting to be had.
Yeah. And if a guy goes into if it's a heterosexual relationship or a homosexual relationship, it doesn't matter. If you're going into a relationship with someone who will not submit to the authority of reason, you've already signed your own death warrant.
Yeah.
I went my whole life socially awkward. I'm in a relationship with a wonderful woman right now, and she and I can talk through pretty much anything. And I grew up. My mother was totally histrionic, totally narcissistic, and both my parents were unable to discuss anything.
Uh,
And I think that's how I got so good at pushing these issues of anti-feminism to in the face of not only a feminist movement that will not hear it, but they won't let anybody else hear what I have to say either
yeah.
if they have a way.
Yeah,
Right.
just for the record, I have 4 older sisters and a feminist mother, and without being too specific, I can very clearly definitely state that I have at least a few of them with personality disorders. Like, it's very, very clear.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like you get used to the game after long enough, and you become better equipped of bobbing and weaving with it.
Yeah, and knowing that, I mean, like, so often. One of the things you wanted to talk to me about was the strict anti-feminist work that I do with Fetal Bogan. Um, so I did tell you that I would come on speaking as an MRA, and I've definitely got the credentials.
Here's the thing. I don't actually care what you're. It's just that somebody had talked about streaming, but he said that we can't ever bring up MRA issues or something, and I was like, well, no, that's not a rule that you get. No,
Yeah,
I'm not going to agree to that. Sorry. So
yeah.
I just want to be able to like talk about it. I don't care what you call yourself. So
No, I know, but
okay.
I'm not saying this to ingratiate myself with you. I'm just saying because this is sort of the stuff that, like, he and I, we get right down into the science of anti-feminist rhetoric,
Uh
and
huh.
so that's why I'm very, very um, almost pedantic about what I call myself.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
cool. That's totally fine with me.
because um, a few years ago, so my YouTube channel was called Men's Rights Edmonton, but I changed it to non-humanitarian anti-feminism because back when there was a bit of a rift between what we'll call the MGTOW sectarians and A Voice for Men
Mm.
and MRAs proper. A little bit of a civil war on YouTube.
Yeah,
I
they called
got
it MGTOW versus PigTOW, right? I think that was it.
MGTOW versus MRA, really. I got into it with Barbarossa. Do you know him?
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did a video early last year that was really awesome about
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
what was it? It was about the crime. I think it was the sentencing gap, but it was like a
Yeah.
proper presentation. It was I think like near 90 minutes, and then he
Yeah.
disappeared again.
Yeah. His work is incredible. And so I don't want anyone to think that I think ill of Barbarossa. Um, but we did sort of have an argument. I made a video and he made a response to it, and I made a response to that. And uh, basically, my whole angle was me declaring that I was an MRA who did not give a fuck about men. And I
Yeah,
knew
it's a
that.
little counterintuitive. So yeah.
Well,
But I mean, I'm
uh,
curious. I'm curious. So
yeah, and so I knew that would draw um, a bunch of righteous chest pounding
mhm.
from a bunch of these MGTOW, because um, I mean I basically my argument was very much like in line with Ayn Rand's philosophy. Do you know much about her stuff?
uh,
Objectivism.
yeah,
A is A.
I think I have a basic handle on it, which is that um, uh, you should do things because it will improve your life, and you have to think very, very logically about those things. And if you make the right choices, it will improve other people's lives as well.
Yeah, exactly. And to put it even more simply, that altruism, the belief that you can do something purely for other people, is is delusional,
Uh-huh.
and that all human behavior is ultimately self-serving.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think
and
I
so
agree with that too. Like, all these things, like the things that I've done that are the most good in this world are things that I was also somehow benefiting from. Like when I was
yeah,
doing collaborative music with people who didn't know how to make electronic music, and I was recording them and they became popular. Like, that was such a great thing for them, but it was
yeah,
also, something that I slightly benefited from because I was a part of the project. And the funny thing was that, like, weird self-righteous SJWs who I think were bitter because I never worked with them started being like, yeah, but you only did that because you benefited from it. And it's like,
yeah,
you're dumb.
yeah.
you know
And that's and so I demonstrated that's the problem with SJWs. They really care. They care about the poor, and they care about the alphabet people, and they care about the Muslims,
They
and they
don't really
care
care,
about
though. They care about enacting revenge, and that's all they care about.
yeah. And so ultimately a they have a drive that is self-serving, and the fact that it's self-serving is not bad, but the fact that they deny it and dress it up to themselves and the world as just caring about other people, and you don't really care,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, I saw exactly that mentality within the ranks of MGTOW, and so I knew that I could provoke it by making a video saying, "Look, I don't care. This is just me. This is," and I was totally straight up. I said, "This is one big nerd revenge fantasy for me." By being being anti-feminist for me is just getting back at society because I hate them, and
Huh.
I knew that would get a bunch of MGTOW saying, "See, look, he says he doesn't care," right? And big pompous shows of false piety from these guys, which
Uh-huh.
is exactly what I got.
Huh.
Um, and so now, and I had got a bunch of people from the MGTOW side being very angry with me for calling my channel Men's Rights Edmonton, even though I didn't care about men. So, to accommodate them, I changed the name of my channel to Non-Humanitarian Anti-Feminism.
Okay, so you were
Uh,
that. So that came by sort of a trial and error 4D chess game or something.
yeah, well, I just wanted to I wanted to from the very beginning. I only joined the men's rights movement because I've always been opposed to any kind of identitarianism,
Mm-hmm.
right? So and of course the men's rights movement is given the name is identitarian. But I joined them because I needed a faction that was organized and had their shit together,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that would help me be anti-feminist.
Mm.
Um, so I did promote, I promoted intactivism, I promoted compassion for men and all that stuff. But I mean, it wasn't just because I really care and I'm a really good person and I really care. Can't you see how much I care? It's because promoting male empathy is corrosive to feminism, and fuck feminists
Yeah.
because I hate. And
It's
uh,
not the approach that I would have taken, but I can see how you got there.
yeah, and I don't. And here's the big difference: I don't expect you to
Mm.
have the same motivations as me. But as soon as I said that I wasn't motivated by altruism,
Mm-hmm.
I got a whole bunch of people who never did fuck all giving me shit for my lack of altruism.
Uh-huh.
And um, and so now like um, like I do I work on strictly anti-feminist rhetoric now, just because I've already made a name for myself among anti-feminists,
Mm-hmm.
um, and uh, um, and I want to come up with something that can drive feminism out of every community, religious and atheist, gay and straight, sports culture, nerd culture, movies, everything that it's infected. It's like the Borg. It has to be driven back.
Yeah, I came up with. So is that the non-feminist thing?
Yeah, well, so non-feminist is not the same thing as anti-feminist.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was actually developed by Fiedelbogen, and so he was the guy who was saying that we couldn't speak in terms of men's rights, and he's very he says things that piss off a lot of sections of the men's rights movement, or MGTOW rather.
I don't find him, just very much to be clear, he didn't piss me off. It's just more like, that's not a rule that's gonna work on my show, so take it or leave it.
He's here in the chat too, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I wasn't offended, like if somebody is very has a very firm ideological goal or philosophical or pragmatic goal, that's fine. It's just that, like, I've never talked to you, and Derek is a big ol' MRA, so like to promise that we'll never bring it up is hard for me.
No,
I do think it'd be interesting though to have that conversation. I guess that kind of strategic, linguistic, 4D chess style. I guess it's like kind of an optics discussion, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe now we've
that really is what Fiedelbogen is great at, and so he came up with the whole non-feminist thing, drip feeding the term non-feminist into the public consciousness. And now, if you Google the term non-feminist, or if you search the term non-feminist on Twitter, you will find pages and pages of people declaring their hatred for non-feminist people.
Wow.
Yeah, and that, of course, that when Fiedelbogen started subtly popularizing that term, he knew that would be the eventual consequence. So when you say 4D chess, he's the guy you want to talk to.
Yeah. Well, I came up with a non-feminist blurb that if a graphic designer wanted to actually make into an image would be delightful to me. I said it would say gay non-feminist at the top, and then colon, and it would say, because my dating options are limited enough as it is without women telling me who I'm allowed to be attracted to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so so that I don't know what more to say. That's why I just keep repeating. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
I did just want to mention though, Nick, I do think it's really valuable that you mentioned, that you had all these motivations for doing a lot of things that I think were really helpful and really good. And that people being critical of your motivations, I guess, not being totally pure. Like, I think that's really worth thinking about. I think a lot of people, like, aren't motivated to do things because they feel like, I don't know, like, their heart's not all in it or whatever. And I think that's kind of worth highlighting, that, like, whatever your motivation is, ultimately, we're living in, like, an empirical reality.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and people have... So... to bring it back to Ayn Rand, as far as she saw it, altruism was the big philosophical enemy, and I completely agree with that. I think that people they feel guilty if they're doing something purely for themselves, and the only motive anybody has to do things is self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, if you tell people that doing things out of self-interest makes them a bad person, well, then everybody's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to be looking for someone to tell them that they're not bad, and they'll do whatever it takes. They'll drink whatever fucking Kool-Aid comes down the pike. Just so that they don't look like one of those bad self-interested people. And if we just proliferate the idea that it's okay to have, like, you don't need to be motivated by the pure and virtuous love of men in order to do men's rights activism. You can have other motives, like revenge.
Yeah, well, and the thing that I love about her is you have like all these complicated questions in philosophy, and like Ayn Rand just kind of came in with big swinging dick energy, and it was like, nope, like there's like no, Kant is canceled actually, right? And like to some degree, her treatment of a lot of those questions is a little bit like it's not quite as like rigorous as you'd expect in like typical philosophy, but that's what I love about her is she gives you this philosophy that's kind of like right out of the box, totally useful, largely very, you know, like her main assertion is like, you know, reality exists, and when people are trying to convince you that like it's all an illusion or it's all in your head, you know, like what are they really trying to do? And like, do we really need to take those questions seriously? And I think she found a way to kind of like bring philosophy back to earth and to give us something that's really useful. And I think it resonates especially with a lot of men because men are constantly bombarded with messages about how their self-worth needs to be defined through other people and through sacrifice to others. So
Yeah.
I think that especially for people who like don't have a lot of direction in their lives or they're very depressed, like I think that Ayn Rand is extremely just useful. She's just ultimate like defense against the dark arts, you know.
yeah, and basically, I mean, something that seems very central to the gay rights message is don't be ashamed to be yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
And feminists sure came and turned that one up on its head.
Yeah, exactly. And so so trying to figure out some sort of counter rhetoric to the feminist rhetoric that comes along and fucking assimilates everything.
Yeah.
That I think is it won't make culture less gynocentric, right? It won't tackle gyno. Well, it sort of will by proxy, by tackling feminism. I think that there is still a place for the like pro-male men's rights arguments that are not strictly anti-feminist. And there is a place for promoting compassion towards men, but my department, my strictly anti-feminist department now, is just taking feminist arguments and just showing that they got the math wrong, and that's it.
Okay, so we can. I did want to discuss intactivism because I'm trying to get into it. I'm trying to do something that will, maybe be able to influence my local politics. And the reason why is basically objectivism. I am not circumcised, so I believe that I could be effective in being a communicator because I don't have the deep visceral rage that people who did undergo genital mutilation have. That, it's and then it's coupled with the fact that they're being ignored and they're being, told, well, it doesn't really count because you're not a woman. And then people get mad and then they're like, whoa, these guys are like really intense. And I was really inappropriate. I mean, if it was done to me, it would have been really bad, but I don't see what they're so mad about, and so it's this very infuriating thing. So, but the altruism is, it's not, I'm not doing this to be altruistic. I'm doing this because I see it as the most effective way to, like, if you could make male genital mutilation illegal, people would start to realize, wow, why was it not illegal before? Why are we doing this now? And then it would be an unlocking of all sorts of other doors. Like, once you did that, other things would become possible. And I do that because I legitimately think that feminism is ruining the world and making me unhappy.
Yes.
So,
yes.
like,
and here, as I see it, is the flaw with what you just did is that you're looking at it from the wrong end of the bottleneck. I would encourage you and
Oh, no,
anyone
no, no,
else.
no, no. I already did.
No, but
Okay.
just listen. So
Okay.
I would encourage you and anybody else. So when I did my Intactivism, I was already like I had been doing social justice style like scenestivism for years, and I don't know if you have these same people in Seattle. Do you see people wearing matching vests and collecting donations on the street?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for like Doctors Without Borders and
Oh,
Amnesty
yeah.
International.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I had done a bit of that with those people, and I took all of that training and just started my own street intactivism thing. So with shirts that say "Foreskins are awesome," those of course attract eyeballs like you wouldn't believe. And we were standing there with clipboards, which make us look professional and like we belong there. And so people would just come up, and we would just give them anti-circumcision literature and discuss the issues with them. But in the just getting out there and going on the streets, just see for yourself what kind of fucking mental gymnastics people will do to not give a fuck about the life safety of an infant. Right, when you go over all of the possible deformities and mortality, that an infant mortality that could come from as a result of an entirely unnecessary amputation. You watch them justify. I mean, they will pull out arguments that you would never imagine, that you would never use in any other circumstance.
Yeah. No, and I'm prepared for that because I interact with these people all the time. Like, certainly on Facebook, I used to occasionally interact with these people in person. And, even like talking to my mother, who is a big fan of Jordan Peterson, I still sometimes have these issues. And one of the reasons that I want to try this is because I feel very deeply that if people just, thought of it in the right way, I think that they could start to get it. And I wouldn't be that guy. Like, I am expecting them to be completely irrational. I'm expecting them to just say completely, really, really dumb shit that would probably really anger a lot of guys who had mutilation and who've come to terms with it. But I'm not. And there's
actually, yeah.
What? Say again? Yeah, say it again.
We get punched actually because you're challenging deeply repressed issues that they have.
Like the guys who've been cut, or
yes, yeah. If it's possible that they could absolutely. I mean, that they could absolutely lose their shit. I've seen Intactivists upload difficult conversations that they've had, and these guys looked about ready to knock their block off.
Wow.
The worst one I saw, it was a young guy, and I think he was protesting by himself. He was handing out, some little cards that had like a list of functions lost, right? And like he hands it to some people, and like one of this like young woman took the card, and she's holding the card, and she says to him, "But is it really that big of a deal, right? Like, but why are you really against this?" And she's literally holding the damn card, right? And like, I guess it's kind of an inversion, right? It's not like he was, in danger, but just this idea that like, oh, how could you not want to just punch her in the face? Like,
yeah, and I mean, if like, to me, it seems self-evident that amputating a piece of an infant's genitals is just unnecessary and inhuman. I mean, like, and if it's one of these things, like I can't make a case for it because it should be self-evident. You know what I mean? Like,
it's almost like all you can do is over intellectualize it at that point, when like really it should just be a matter where you take a step back and like, what are we looking at?
It's going to fall on deaf ears, and in fact, the more you intellectualize it, the less is going to get through.
Well, and the more you give them an opportunity, right, to expand upon some bit of your argument, and then
oh my god, yeah. Well, like I've got a cleft lip, right? A cleft lip and palate. Okay, and so I had a bunch of surgery that came with certain risks of mortality when I was an infant myself, and I've had people try to compare my cleft lip and palate surgery to circumcision.
Oh,
right?
God.
Oh well, and then when I tell them, when I go, well, okay, the big difference is that.
Oh, I can't show this probably. Oops, I need to not have this on my screen because there's like actual.
But when I tell them that foreskin is not a birth defect, then they start getting off into like, well, what is really a birth defect? Like, and they start getting all fucking postmodernist about this shit. And like, you cannot. Again, it comes back down to what you were saying about Chris Rock in an argument. You can't speak rationally with these people. They've already committed to mutilating baby dicks. I mean, there's no talking to them.
Okay, well, here's though advantage that I might have, which is that Washington State is one of it might be the lowest rate of circumcisions in the United States. It's only about 10% of babies are circumcised here.
That's excellent, and I mean,
because it's Washington State. I mean, Seattle specifically is, where hippies go to die. Basically, and so there's a long tradition of people that remember the 60s and remember the sexual revolution and things like that, and like they're really, really religiously leftists. Like, they're not this like leftist new money that's come along, where they think that they just made all this crap up. It's like, no, this is like women in their 70s who are actually decent people and actually like dancing to world music and actually don't hate men and never really thought anything about feminism specifically since the 70s, when all it was to them was Ruth Bader Ginsburg's, Supreme Court cases. And it's this weird thing where, it's like all these people are living in this isolated reality where they don't understand what, younger feminists or even dedicated older feminists were actually like. They just remember, like being like, yeah, it would be cool if I got to, like legally do this little stupid thing. And then they got it. And then they're like, yay, I'm a feminist, like,
yeah. And I mean, and again, there's no, like, you can go to conservative conventions and people will be like, oh yeah, back in the 70s we were really fighting for something, but now it's gone completely off the rails. And I mean, and again, you can't ever reach these people. It's nearly impossible. I think
I think that I could reach some of these people who are older like that. Like, it wasn't all that hard to reach my mother, for example, but I did have to show her the movie. Now, I was hoping that my mother could get other members of her community to maybe watch the movie. But the thing is about my mother is that she is really not very good at getting things done that involve other people cooperating. Like, she has two strategies is what it seems, and I don't think she'll listen to this. She knows about my channel, but she sort of has two strategies. If you're a friend of hers, and a friend does mean acquaintance, because she's one of these people with many, many acquaintances. Like, my mom probably sees well over, 30 to 40 different people regularly each year for, past 5 years, and she's in her mid-70s, But no, even more than that, because she lives in a community like place. It's like a co-housing place where they have dinners in this big house together. So she is always interacting with people. If she is trying to get one of them to potentially do something, she throws out the idea, kind of like just a kind of little suggestion. And then if they respond well and say, oh yeah, I would like to watch American Circumcision, she's like, okay, cool. But if they even have the slightest bit of being like, Oh, well, yeah, I've met. Okay, and so that's what she did with this woman. And apparently the woman was like, "Oh, I've encountered intactivists before and they were actually very aggressive and I don't see how it's worse or comparable to female genital mutilation. We didn't get our sons circumcised though because it's unnecessary, and ultimately, I think the the religious freedom argument is more than reasonable to keep it legal, which is strange because she is a lawyer and my mom basically just dropped it after that. But I'm going to see this woman over the holidays because I'm friends with her. She's actually a really nice, talented, capable, intelligent woman, and she's like Catholic and she has like 8 kids now, and the kids are really cool. So I am probably going to bring it up to her and talk to other people about it, because I would like to have a screening of this movie, because it's like, look, I didn't really realize much of anything myself until I watched this movie, and neither did my mom. That's the point of this movie. It's like you think that you know stuff, but you only know maybe 5%.
And I think that your mom's approach there is wise. You know, again, with my in my experience with activism, you want to preach to the nearly converted. You just want to float the ideas. You just want to offer these ideas, and whoever gravitates towards them, that's a win. Don't ever try to convince anybody, because you'll end up frustrating yourself, and just alienating them. So if rather than trying to change anybody's mind. I think a much wiser strategy long term is just to create a block of people with a consensus that routine infant circumcision is not okay, that it meets all of the. If you just look up, I don't know the American criminal code too well, but I know that with the Canadian criminal code, section 268 of the Canadian criminal code. Describes assault, and routine infant circumcision meets that. If I circumcised an infant's finger, I would be guilty of assault with a weapon. But if I do it to their penis, I'm okay. It is assault. It's assault with a weapon. It clearly meets the legal standard of assault, and the legislation prohibiting female genital cutting, which was introduced in Canada, the U.S., and the UK in 1997, it's basically like it's an addendum to, well, in Canada anyway, it's an addendum to the existing assault legislation, and it's like writing, well, you're not allowed to assault anyone, and you're definitely not allowed to punch them in the face. It's completely redundant.
So wait, I have something to say though about a few things you just said. This whole idea of preaching to the choir or the already newly converted or whatever.
Nearly.
The nearly converted?
The almost converted.
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing. That woman is not. She's very reasonable and very smart. She's a lawyer. I consider myself a converter, and it's one of the hardest things to do, but I know I've done it numerous times. And you have to be dealing with reasonable people. You have to, there's a number of circumstances, but every time you actually do that, it's so valuable. You know what I mean? Like when you're the person that helps facilitate that switch where they're like, wait, I never thought about intersectionality being totally racist because it assumes that, white women or that black women are worse off than black men, when that's just not true, and things like that. And that's been like the spark that's initiated somebody thinking critically about all of it, I have a feeling that with that woman and with other people in my mother's community, because, you know, I've known a lot of them for many years, like a number since I was 13, 14 in the 90s. And they are critical thinkers, they are intelligent, and they treat each other sort of like family. And so I think that, I mean, it is probably good that my mom just threw it out there, but I think that if I went over for Thanksgiving dinner and I brought it up and I was like, yeah, my mom told me that she mentioned this movie to you, and I just want to say, and this would be my strategy. I mean, I've talked to you before, and you're such a smart woman and capable. You know, you're a lawyer, and I just think that I would really, really ask you very kindly that to watch this movie, because I'm a, you know, advocate for the gender specific issues of men and boys, and I'm very strongly like that. But even for myself, I watched that movie and it blew me away and changed my mind, and I realized I only knew about 5% of the issue, which I was already convinced about. I was already convinced that circumcision should be illegal, but I didn't really understand why, like what were the, you know, damages. And so I, just because you are such a smart lady and you're a lawyer and everything, I would really love it if you did take the time to watch that, you know. And I don't think that would be too hard.
No, well, you know, if you think that you've had success, and if you think that you can show others how to replicate it, then by all means, go ahead. But I am way too cynical for that.
Okay.
I would encourage people to go out and try like you have, because I'm confident that they will see how badly that approach fails. Well,
this is a woman who did not circumcise her kids because she accepts that it's unnecessary.
Right. And so again, so you're talking about getting the idea across to someone who you can already tell from the outset is going to be, or may be, somewhat receptive.
Yeah,
right.
And I think the only real thing that she would have against watching a movie is the fact that she's so busy.
Yeah, and again, if it's just something like being busy that prevents them from going over the information, you know, don't. I would recommend against pushing it. And
yeah, I haven't even said a single thing at this point.
yeah.
I'm very diplomatic. I've always had social skills, and these people like me, and they think of me as intelligent.
Well, that's excellent. I've always been something of a black sheep, but.
I mean, I appreciate your feedback, but what I am, what's important to me is that, you know, viewers get the impression that, you know, there are different ways of approaching these issues that work for different people. And if, you know, if you're somebody that's pretty confident in your abilities to engage non-threateningly with certain people where they're not going to have adverse reactions because you've done it, like, because I've brought up anti-feminist things at the community before. They showed that horrible documentary, The Mask You Live In.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and I was like,
the Twin Cities Men's Center did a showing of that too, and I was just like, guys, why?
Yeah, and so as soon as it was over, there was supposed to be a discussion, and they invited all the boys to come see it, and like only the one boy, who's the oldest, he was like 15 at the time, showed up, and then he left after like 20 minutes or so. He was like, "Oh, fuck you," you know what I mean? Like, which I was proud of him. But then after I almost immediately raised my hand, and I was like, "Hey guys, I just want to clarify that this is not actually a men's movie that's about males. This is a feminist movie." And then that's where the conversation went from that point forward. Only one guy who was an immigrant from the Philippines said anything about, "Oh yeah, patriarchy has been hard for me." But he was talking about like the old country and how he had to like learn to let go of the old traditionalist Filipino customs by moving over here. But everybody else was like, you know, the parents were like, Yeah, they didn't really say anything in that movie. Like, because okay, so here's the deal about my mother's community. It's all the kids there are boys. Like, there's two girls. One is maybe like 5, and the other is probably like 14 or 15, and has Down syndrome. And then there's like 16, 17, 18 boys or something. So, they are actually very concerned about their boys. And so they watched The Mask You Live In movie, and it was basically just like, yeah, they're really bad, and they like this bad stuff, and it's programmed into them, and you should just make them hug each other more. And they were like, I don't feel like they offered anything that helps. Like, I don't know, that gives me no help in how to raise my son. Like the one guy said specifically, because they're certainly not anti-feminists. He was like, like, if I had a daughter, which I don't, I would know how to raise her in this like good feminist way. Like, there's all this advice out there, and there's just nothing for boys that's like actually tangible and actually realistic. And then I was like, I think he spoke first because he was annoyed, and then I was like, oh good, I'm glad that you bring that up. And so I and so these are people that had a good reaction to that, because as soon as I pointed that out, like, another woman raised her hand and she was like, yeah, actually, I was reading the credits and it was basically all women who worked on this movie, and so I was wondering about that, and I was like, yeah, and I brought up other things, like how there was that woman who says, masculinity is defined by being absent of femininity, and I was like, okay,
are you fucking kidding?
Yeah, and I brought that up, and I was like, think about how deeply offensive that is, like, and people were like, yeah, that's actually pretty offensive. We're just kind of used to it, but now that you point that out, so
yeah, it's not just offensive; it's completely inaccurate. So much of masculinity is about being attracted to femininity. I mean, like, I don't. It's just a completely ridiculous statement.
Yeah, it's absurd. So that's what it's like with these people, and so I want to make it clear that, like, this is very far away from me standing on a street corner, and I'm interested in both, but I would approach both very, very differently, and I think that we should do what we feel that we're capable of. And so if you consider yourself a converter like I do, and I would imagine that that's one of the rarest type qualities, you still have to really try really, really hard to perfect your craft. And I've made tons of videos about, how I talk to people on the internet and all this kind of stuff. Like, I have all these weird strategies. Like, my newer strategy that I've been dealing with is just pretending that everybody already thinks that feminism is uncool. And the reason I do that is because feminism has died out, for the most part, in cool pop culture. Like, it's in the mainstream movies that people don't like, and it's in politics, and it's in the tacky-ass Netflix shows that people don't like, but it's not a countercultural, like, hip thing at all, and it stopped being right around 2016, because the countercultural thing was to make fun of feminism. And everybody, like, feminists have all heard of Blair White and stuff. And so, what I do now is, like, I have, if I run into a bunch of feminists trying to bully me on the internet, I'll be like, oh my god, you guys are still, like, actually feminists? I didn't know that there were, like, this was a thing. Like, oh my god, you guys are basically acting like the Hot Topic of countercultural movements. Do you know the store Hot Topic?
Yeah, we have those in Canada, yes.
Yeah, it's like the corporate mall store for, like, getting Marilyn Manson t-shirts in the 90s or whatever the crap they sell now. So that's like a new strategy, so I'm always working on these little strategies for, like, converting, and I would have to do an entirely different thing on a street corner. So, well,
it sounds like you and I we think it very much, a lot of ways in the same direction. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have to wrap this up soon.
That's fine.
I got to go do some stuff. But you say you started off by saying if you consider yourself a converter. If you don't, and you're like me, my approach is I abandon hope, all ye who enter here. I have long ago abandoned hope of speaking reasonably to anybody who holds feminist beliefs, and rather than spending any energy on trying to accommodate them or meet them halfway or even meet them 10% of the way, I just if I do anything at all, I just lay my anti-feminism on the table as naked as I can and just let them react how they will. And because their metaphysic is so poorly developed, anything they do in response is just going to collapse in on itself. There
I
are
love that. It's so similar to my approach too. Like I don't sugarcoat it. I call it the red horse pill.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I do have to just in my personal life, I do have to maintain um, amicable relations with feminists, and I don't ever discuss feminism. I don't ever try to change their mind. I'm just very nice to them, because I know that it's just getting into it with them is it's just going to add disharmony to and be completely unnecessary. I'm not, and I approach anti-feminism as being anti-feminism rather than anti-feminists, right? So I'm against an idea rather than against people. And Jordan Peterson talks about how people don't have ideas; ideas have people. And so rather than coming at it from I'm out to defeat the feminists, I'm out to defeat feminism, the idea, and that of course because feminists are so invested in feminism, they can't. They will take it personally when you trash feminism, but you're still not trashing them. It's been great talking with you guys. I'd love to come back again sometime.
Yeah.
And I'd love to shoot the shit with you guys about rhetoric and tricks for disseminating this stuff. And
agreed. I thought that this was a sorry.
I'm glad, even though I haven't been active for years, I'm really glad to hear that guys like you have come along and are really carrying the torch. And you're not you're totally separate from HBR and AVFM and everybody else. It's great to see that you guys are doing this.
That's really, really nice, and I thought that this was a great stream. I think that this covered a lot of information, and we were engaged in talking the whole time, and I would love to have you back on at some point in the future. I already thought of an idea. Would you be interested in talking to a gay psychologist that I wouldn't say he's like super hardcore anti-feminist or anything, but he is he's definitely not blue pill.
I would absolutely love that because just to on one last thing, I think I said earlier in this stream, I do have an alcohol problem, and so I've been through the mental health and addictions system, and it is totally scripted by bell hooks. God, it's so bad. It's so bad, dude.
I actually did a stream responding to there was a collection of essays called Women Respond to the Men's Movement published in 1992, and there was a bell hooks article in there which reads exactly as you'd expect it to be.
Does it have anything to do with that book The Will to Change?
Yeah.
Okay, because that's the one bell hooks book that I've actually read in full, and it's literally the worst book I've ever read in my life. It's so bad.
Like, of course, narcissism springs from people suppressing emotions and thoughts. But bell hooks leaves out the and thoughts part and attributes narcissism as a result of emotional suppression to men and maleness. It's fucking retarded. And of course, these people, once they've heard the gospel of bell hooks, nothing else will register.
I just don't know how people can even vaguely take it seriously. Like, it's, if you read that book and it's so obviously just like, this woman needs lots and lots of therapy and she never should have a book published. She can't even write.
Yeah, well, it sounds like we have a lot of fat to chew for the next.
Okay. Well, I'll let you go then, and I will talk to the psychologist who's been on here, and we can talk about some stuff like effective forms of communication, etc. And I hope that everybody who tuned in has a great night. Goodbye.